sense. And that sounds lovely now, because obviously we were justified, but believe me, in the beginning, when we're telling people, like, look, we're going to do what no one else is doing. You know, everyone else is doing those things because they make sense. So if you do the opposite, yes. So we did anyway. So we went ahead and we did things, for example, that the entire studio, we stopped for 2 days every month. Now that's 10% of your working power. You know, that's very expensive. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of time, a lot of money, and it was very nerve-wracking, because you think, well, what if they're not going to create anything? We just wasted 10%, a lot of money, a lot of time. I'm going to go bankrupt because I did these things. And it is scary. And when we started, we were very, very strict about it, to set up a culture where we delegate, we give people the power to make those choices, because the problem is that I remember having bosses who didn't get when I came up with some brilliant ideas, and I didn't want to be that boss. So we have a rule where people decide what they want to work on, and that's that. There is no approval, there is no nothing, they can do whatever they want. We have rules like, you have to create something with someone else, for example. So that means that you can't work by yourself. And that helps a lot. I'm clear, I'm already boring some people. That's okay, that's okay. But cool Minecraft should look. So, so what happens is that you know, we let them go and just do crazy stuff. So that's the boring part. Basically, we set up a culture where people feel that they can do crazy things, right? Now, the less boring is that there was one game jam, which was actually a global game jam, which I advise you to look at. It's every year. It's a great event. And to last year, was it last year? Jeez, time moving fast. Yes, last year was Heartbeat. Was the subject of that game jam. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with game jam as a concept. It's basically a very intense game creation session that you do something in 2 days what a normal team wouldn't be able to do in weeks. It's a very intense, very crazy, creative and production session. So the topic was Heartbeat. And the team was thinking, look guys, yeah, we can do something, or we can make a music game, or we can make a romantic story because it's about heartbeat. Or we can take it absolutely literal and we can say it is about heartbeat. And then came that, you know what guys, you know what the funniest thing ever is? That imagine this, there's a heart transplant, doctor says, pass me the new heart. And then the nurse picks up the heart and then it slips up and it falls. And we thought that is the funniest thing ever. Now, you do have to have a very weird moral sense, or have to be like really tired or high on pizza and Red Bull to think that is funny. But it is. And we got confirmed when my uncle went into heart surgery, and I was telling him this, and he thought it was funny. So we are fine. So obviously we thought, well, what's funnier than a heart surgery? So that's where it started. And of course there is this ridiculous thing when everything simulator. My favorite was the German product is a street cleaning simulator. I just love the concept that you go home after a long day, you kick back, you open a drink, you say, like, you know what? I have my snack, I mean, put in, and I'm gonna clean streets in minutes. I just love that. I just love that concept. So we thought that it was funny. So that's how Surgeon Simulator 2013 were born. And on those 2 days, the first version was created. When we got back to the office, I remember looking at it on Monday. Now, you know, you have those moments when you look at something you did and you think, did we really do this? This is just weird. But when you just feel, guys, this is gonna be fantastic, because we might be embarrassed for life. Like seriously, we might be butchered because people are gonna think it's tasteless. People are gonna think not gonna get the joke, and we are gonna be it's gonna ruin Bossa forever. Let's release it. And that was it. Again, that feeling that we can do something that no one else will do. You know, when to me the answer was that one of my business partners said, but okay, seriously, so would anyone release it? And when we said no, we looked at each other with like this glee, is like, yeah, this is our game. because I can't see any other publisher ever releasing a game which is called a simulator, but it isn't. And it is about heart surgery, which meant to be a comedy. No one would, like you go into EA and you say this, and they're gonna say, well, that is the door. Could you show yourself out? So for us, it was an amazing moment. And we put out there, and we were extremely nervous. We were extremely, I couldn't tell you. Obviously, when someone asked, we were like, obviously, this is the future of game development. We are 100% confident. We weren't. We were really terrified that people are not going to get the joke. And there's always that you stand up, you say a joke, exactly this. And you think, that's going to be awful. So we put it out there, and it was magical, because people started coming in and saying, oh, this is the funniest thing ever, this is hilarious, this is brilliant. And then the YouTube video started popping up. And honestly, guys, I was near tears. It was just such a touching moment when people started, reaching out, and we did some cool stuff. I mean, we won a BAFTA for our first game, Monster Mine, and that was, amazing, and all that. But nothing was quite like this. We got a lot of professional, positive feedback, from businessmen and creative people, and awards, and best new studio, and all that. But this was different, because this was coming directly from the players, and they were coming and talking to us. So we released that game. And it was mad, because we released it, and the original version has a lot of assets which were borrowed from other people. For example, we had the music from Casualty, the TV show, in the game. Now we quickly realized that that's going to cause some issues. So we basically were in this mad rush to remove anything which wasn't ours, because in a game jam you still cheat, because you just want to prove a point, it doesn't matter how. So then we were in this mad rush to replace all that, and we just put in some random music and whatever, but it just grew and grew and grew. And we thought, okay, so the joke was funny. Now what can we be clever about is what can we do? So then we put it on Greenlight. I don't know if you're familiar with Steam Greenlight. People nodding. Okay, so Steam Greenlight is a very interesting process where the community can vote if they want to see that game on Steam or not. And we put it there, once again, doubting, thinking, it's not going to happen. But you know what? If you don't ask, you don't get. So we put it up there. I kid you not, we broke the charts. Basically, in the back end, the way it looks is that it shows you a chart of how many votes you got over time. And it shows you how a top 10, how a top 50, how a top 100 game looks like. So you can compare yourself and how you're progressing. Now that artwork was static at the time. Our chart was literally out. There was an error on our screen because we grew faster than anyone else before. And again, that was the point when we realized this is not about us. Until that point, it was we think we were hilarious, and other people thought we were hilarious, and we felt really special. But about that time, we realized that it's really not about us anymore. It is about the community of people who create stuff, and that's based on your game. And it's really difficult, because suddenly you feel that your game and your creative vision and what you created has a life of its own. And people started to do crazy stuff. People started to make comics. People started to make their own Let's Play videos. People started to remix the content. People started to do crazy things we haven't even thought of. So we were there looking at it and we were thinking, this is now bigger than us. And we got the green light and we thought, it's not just about the fear, will people laugh at the joke we just said, but it became a thing that, how can we not let people down? And that made it even worse, because then you're really stressed, because then you think, now people think you're hilarious, so your next joke has to really be good, because otherwise you're just going to embarrass yourself. So the first game took 48 hours to make, so we decided to give 48 days to make the final version. And for no other reason, we just liked that kind of thing. It looked nice, and so we said, like, you have to set a deadline. So we were like, yeah, 48 days, why not? And after 48 days, we were ready with the game. We extended, we added new surgeries. So instead of just heart, we had some other surgeries, and we put it out on Steam. And once again, the game just exploded. We got sales which we absolutely didn't expect. Again, a new range of YouTubers jumped on the game, including PewDiePie, who is obviously fantastic, and I'm most of anyone under the age of 16 in the room, I'm sure that familiar with PewDiePie. If you aren't, do look up PewDiePie on YouTube, because he's, and his kind is the future of entertainment. I'm just telling you this now. So later, years later, you can say that Imre called it. But it is going to happen. These guys are amazing, because it's not just that they clock in a couple of million video views on every single video they do, but what's scary is that their audience is not just watching, but actually pay attention, which is really scary. I work with a lot of television people, and they used to people not paying attention. It's just on, and it's kind of like there, and you are looking at your phone and texting, or looking at the website, etc. People watching those YouTube videos actually pay attention, and it's really scary how powerful as a medium that is. So anyway, so PewDiePie, who, by the way, on a side note, I have to say, on his videos, he appears this brash, loud person, and I can tell you, don't tell anyone, he's the kindest guy ever. He's this quiet-spoken, nice guy, and it's really weird to meet him in person. So obviously he was making, and those videos started to clock in a couple of million views, and then they, of course, advertised again a whole new generation of remix started to appear. And then we felt, okay, we already knew that this game is a game of the audience, and we are just here to do a job for them. And then we started to have fun with it. So we did, for example, if you're familiar with it, an extension with Team Fortress. Now, the Team Fortress extension was a weird one, because obviously, like most people, we're a big fan of the game, of all of the games of Valve. And being on Steam, they made the mistake of giving us an email address, so we felt, let's use that email address. And then one night we were out in a pub, and we were just talking, and what would be funny, and we said, oh, you know what would be really hilarious? If we took some characters and we reproduced that scene of the introduce the medic, and we thought that would be really funny. And everyone was like, nah, that's never gonna happen. And I said, you know what, I'm just gonna send an email. And I was like, hi Tom. So we were thinking that, could we please have, that right? And the answer, yeah, sure. And that was the weirdest thing, because that was it. Now obviously that was a lot behind it. That was, we were listening to them, we were very polite with them, we had a very nice back and forth, so we were building a relationship. But the point is that very few other companies would have been that flexible as Valve, and I think, I do hope that the new generation of game companies are going to be like that, like them. So we added that content, which was again fantastic, but later on with the community outreach, we started introducing ideas. For example, some of the achievements are based on what Let's Players did. So we looked at the Let's Player videos, and we took ideas and put them back in the full game and turned them into achievements. When we released the Alien game, Alien Edition, the Alien Autopsy, we named the alien organs after famous YouTubers. And it was a nice back and forth, because, it's just, you can't, at that point, you cannot think you created that success, because you really didn't. You started it, and of course you got something right, but the success was not created by us. The success was created by everyone else. It was created by a lot of people who bought the game. It was created by the people who have created videos. I think our latest estimation is that on YouTube, there is, I believe, 2 million plus individual videos, which are somehow related to surgeon. Let that sink in, not views, individual videos. That's mind-boggling when you start thinking about this, and it's just really scary to be thinking about this, is that, oh my god, that many people felt to create that many videos. That was absolutely fantastic. And when you add up the views, I think we're like something 200 plus million combined views. I don't know, it's very complicated to do this, but a lot, like a lot. So a lot of people felt, and those are the people who made this game, not us. And a lot of people ask that how many people were involved in development, and I say, well, it was 4 guys who did the programming, art, etc., and then the rest of the team. And I had a very strong team who did nothing else but just answer every single tweet, comment on every single YouTube video, and just engage in every possible way, because just as a mean for us to say thanks. Every time someone did a video, that's just humbling, because you think someone thought that our work was good enough for them to spend time on, and then to think that, oh, you know what, I can take this idea further and I can make a joke based on this. So we just found the need to say thanks to them, and of course it created this nice environment where we suddenly had really good back and forth to people. Hence, for example, our relationship with PewDiePie, which was obviously quite amazing and well developed. And when recently we released the iPad version of Surgeon Simulator with 2 new surgeries, which, by the way, one of the biggest influence to do them were people commenting, and they said, you know what should be the next surgery? You should totally do eye surgery. And people said, that's just no, that's too much. And then someone said teeth surgery, and suddenly eye surgery looks okay. So we did those 2. And again he comes back and he does a couple of videos, and a couple of million people watch those, and you know, that kind of back and forth can exist today, but it was not possible at any other time, because those people I can put the game out and they can download the game 10 minutes later, they can make a video in an hour, edit it, and then 3-4 hours after launch the first videos were out, if not faster. And then those people can comment on it, and I can see it, and I can tweet them, and they can tweet me back, and someone from the community can ask me, oh, how can I finish a teeth surgery? And I can answer, this is how you do it. And it's just, that was impossible a couple of years ago, and now we have this relationship where you can talk to your audience, and I cannot advise you enough. Having a crazy idea is one thing, but make sure that you understand who is your audience, and talk to them. Again, I know I said this a couple of times, but if you remember one thing, you are making a game that's just the first step. And the audience picking it up and doing cool stuff with your game is what turns it into success. The process was quite interesting. When we released the game, it was very successful, both obviously community, financial, every possible way. So we kept adding new content. Or we created the the iPad version. And we have an Android version coming soon, and we're working on a couple of new extensions, and all of that is coming out. But to me, the interesting bit about that was that someone asked me that where are we going to stop, and how we're going to know just how we're not going to turn into this over-sequelized, boring thing when you think, okay, how many skins I can pull up this, and it's tough. It's tough. I'm going to be very honest with you, because when I know that if I release the next version, I am going to make more money than I spent on doing it, it's a really tempting thing, because you think, of course I want to do that. But where is the point when suddenly you lose that creative spark, and where is that point when suddenly your audience is not going to react anymore? And our rule is that until we laugh on our jokes, and until the audience laughs on the joke, we are cool. But as soon as anyone stops laughing, that's the point where we just have to stop immediately. So far, so good. Right? It seems that the reactions are good, and especially the teeth surgery, I've seen some videos where people were making very awful noises whilst doing the surgery, because people were just squealing about the concept of going at someone's teeth with a paddle drill. So basically, our view on this is that we think it's still funny. The audience thinks it's still funny. We're going to continue, but we want to be very, very cautious of not to get on the other side of that, because if you do, then you lose that love and you lose that relationship with your audience. Now, I spent 30 minutes talking now, so I think it's about time that I stop. What I'd like to do is to give a chance to some questions, any questions really. Not medical questions, because that I won't be able to answer. One last story about this, whilst you're thinking about what questions you want to ask, and you are the first one, so just so you know. And the gentleman at the back, I really hope you're going to have a question. So one thing which is really funny is that when we released the game, most people got the joke, and I grew up on Monty Python and Blackadder, and for me, as you can tell from my accent, not exactly a Norwich boy. My wife is, so I'm half Norwegian. But to me, coming to England and coming to the UK was important because of that comedy, and I thought everyone needed David Attenborough. But anyway, point is that we felt that we can be part of that sense of humor. Not everyone gets it though. We've been contacted by several hospitals who sent us emails saying, we heard that you're making a surgery simulator. We would like to use it for training purposes. Now, the first time it happened, I genuinely, I was convinced that it's one of the journals or a player or a YouTuber pulling our leg. So I answered back, like, dear sir. And that felt really funny, because I was like, it's totally, someone is doing this, it's just a joke, it's going to show up on Reddit the next day, it's funny. So I said, like, oh yes, of course, we are very happy to help you, we are happy to provide you with free copies for Surgery Simulator. You might also be interested in Malpractice Simulator 2015, which you will probably need after using Surgery Simulator for training purposes. And I got like a really confused answer, and that's the point when I checked the email address, and I realized it's an actual hospital, and that was an actual surgeon sending me that email. But the funniest thing was when I got an email from a bunch of surgeon students who were using Surgeon Simulator as a drinking game. So, next time you go to a hospital, just ask them, are you familiar with Surgeon Simulator? If they say yes, run. So, do you want to start?
What kind of inspiration did you take from other games, like for instance, Surgery Simulator 2011 thing? Did you take any inspiration from that?
Co-op was, if you're familiar with co-op, it is a game where you have to run. It's really simple. Except it's really, really difficult because you're moving different parts of your body with different buttons, and it is extremely difficult to even make a couple of yards in that game. And that was a major inspiration, because we felt there is something funny about that clunkiness, that you create a universe where there is a set of consistent, the rules are recognizable. There is gravity, there is a ground, there is people, objects hitting each other. You know, there is real life, except your controls are really awkward. But in a way, it is a really accurate simulator, because that's how I would do a surgery in real life. So if anything, it's a perfectly accurate simulation of how I would do surgery. But to us, games like Co-op and other games which do that kind of playing with physics, there were a couple of really funny ragdoll games, and a couple of others. I would say those were the biggest.
Yeah.
Yes?
What kind of programs?
Sorry, then you next.
What kind of programs do you use to make Surgery Simulator?
At the moment, we are using Unity. If you're familiar, Unity 3D is a fantastic application, and you can download it for free. If you go to the professional version, you have to pay for it, but even then it's a manageable price. But for any student, I couldn't advise you enough to try it. And it is a fantastic set of tools, because it allows you to create a game really fast, because you don't have to do a lot of the legwork. I remember when I started making games, making something appear on the screen sometimes took months of work. With Unity, you are there in about 10 seconds. So Unity is fantastic, and as a company, they are a great partner. If you're interested in others, times are changing, because now both Unreal and Crysis are releasing their engines on a different model than before. But I would say that the biggest knowledge base is for Unity. So I advise you to keep an eye on that. And there are amazing tutorials. So if you're thinking about picking up game development, just download Unity and go to some tutorial website and start doing the exercise all the way. And I promise you that in 2-3 weeks you're going to make simple games, and in a couple of months you can make amazing games. Just remember, Thomas was alone. Thomas was alone, even though don't underestimate the work which went into that, because Mike, who's a good friend of mine, he's extremely talented, but it shows that fairly simply you can make something really clever. Surgeon is fairly complex, but it doesn't have to be that complex. Yes?
I was just wondering, in regards to PR and exposure of your game, what difference does it make when the game itself is more story orientated? like Gone Home, you couldn't necessarily rely on Let's Plays and showing off loads of footage because that ruins the experience. And how do you then publicise that game? Or how would you?
As soon as you find the answer to that question, please do let me know. It is difficult. It is difficult. You're absolutely right. So you touched on something very important. Surgeon was extremely YouTubeable. I just invented a word, YouTubeable. So it was very YouTubeable because every time you play it's different. With a story-led game, it's much more difficult. You're absolutely right. I think what you can do is to sell your game on atmosphere rather than content, without spoilers, you know, and talk about, like, have an interesting point to make. That's why Thomas could get, you know, very long. And it's worth noting, by the way, that Mike was working for me at Bossa Studios as a designer, and I insisted on him making Thomas Was Alone, and of course when I became successful, he left. So Thomas, for example, but the same with Gone Home. It had a very unique style, it had a very unique message, and immediately there was something to talk about beyond the story. So when you talk about Gone Home, or when you talk about Thomas, or when you talk about Papers, Please, or when you talk about you know, Brothers, Tale of Two Sons, like when you talk about, you don't necessarily have to talk about what is actually happening in the game. You can talk about something else. Kentucky Zero, Road Zero, like all of those games. There's so much to talk about, which is not the actual content. I think that if you are focusing on a story-led, content-led game, that's what you want to do. So you want to make sure that you have a story where I can talk about it, and you can give an interview for an hour without actually saying anything what happens in the game, but you talk about why that is happening in the game. And I know it's a fairly abstract answer, but unfortunately I don't know any better at this point in time. And yes?
I was wondering if you could talk a bit more about the studio and how you kind of built it up and created your own culture.
We are now 30-something people. So we are considered, I don't know, ultra indie, or but people come up with these terms. I don't understand half of them. Point is that we are you know, fairly big, and for us it was very, very critical that we have that culture. In fact, when we started the business, we set up the rule that we will never grow above 50. And we said if we're going to go above 50, we're going to separate the studio into two, because that's the point when you lose your identity, when you lose who you are. So when you build a team, and it's not necessarily 30 people, even if you decide to make a game, don't think that you have to do it by yourself. You can find other collaborators. What's important that you hire, you know, you decide to collaborate with people who have similar values. And that for us was very important. So when we are hiring someone, we are always asking about what type of games they play, what they think about gaming in general. It's a lot of questions about attitude and personality, right? Making sure that the people who you're going to work with are people who you will be happy to have as a mate. And I know it sounds weird in a company because you think, well, yeah, it's a mate, but you pay them, and sometimes you have to tell them off, and sometimes you have to praise them, and it's like, it feels weird when you're telling your friend, you performed really well this week as a friend, and that's weird. But you know, still, if you have that grounding, when we get passionate arguments about Dwarf Fortress, I mean, like big arguments, the work stops for an afternoon because someone said a question like that. I think that in Dwarf Fortress, I'm like, no, work is over for today. So when you have that kind of community, that's what you want. It becomes harder when you get bigger and bigger. What we do is that we do these game jams where people are encouraged to work with people who they don't normally work with. Because at the moment we are working on 4 different games. So we are also do things that regularly we go out to do stuff together. We try to make the office as comfortable as possible with all the latest games and game consoles there. So basically turning it into an environment where it feels as close to someone's living room as possible. I don't know if it answers the question.
Yeah, definitely has. Thank you.
Yes.
What,
And then you next.
What is your opinion on pay-to-win games and games with microtransactions and just games made just to make money?
I bought the ticket to come up to Norwich from the money I make. And the money I make comes from the company, it becomes the money we post on it. Never apologize for making money out of what you create. If you can afford to make games where you don't have to make any money, because that's brilliant, but even then, make the game remembering, would people be interested if I charged them? If you don't, you can make a really big mistake. Players ultimately make a vote and choice with their money. People choose. I have 5 quid, 50 quid, or 5 million quid, doesn't matter. I choose what I spend it on. And that's a hugely important vote. If I make a game which no one wants to pick up, then I made something which is not that valuable, is it? So never apologize for making a game which makes money. Now, there are different levels of selling out, you know, and there are games which I find that are disrespectful to their players. I hate when, hate is a strong word, I really am uncomfortable when people use terms like whales when they talk about players. A, it's disrespectful. I mean, come on, who wants to be called a whale? And second, that's a gambling term. Like, don't use gambling terms in a video game. It's just not cool. So, I think that with this debate, there's a lot of emotion. What I believe in is that choose your creative vision and try to create an environment where it can get to the highest amount of people. And just before you dismiss games which are free to start, so which you can download for free and start playing, don't forget 2 things. Nowadays, every time we talk about a new game, the first question I get, is it going to be free? That's the first question I get. So there is a huge demand for it. Secondly, the audience reach you have, depending on the game, if you release that game for free or for 69 cents, the reach you have can be anywhere between 5 to 20 times higher if you release it for free. It's all much, much bigger than that. So it is a very, very tricky question, but what I advise to everyone is to focus on your creative vision. Come up with an awesome game you want to make, and then comes the next question, is that, okay, now I have this vision of this game, and how I'm going to put it out in the market, how I'm going to make money at the end of the day. Really, you want to make at least as much money with every single game, which pays for the next one. Obviously, that's the minimum you want to make, and hopefully you do that.
Yeah.
You mentioned how sort of the YouTubeability
Yes.
of Surgeon Simulator.
I love the fact that
New word, but that was what led to Surgeon Simulator's sort of, more widespread success. Like, would you design future games around the sort of thought that, maybe some players will do something in this area or this area? Would you make sort of having a huge Let's Play appeal be a part of future games, or would you just say this is what I want to make, and then go from there again?
Goat Simulator, Octodad, but there are some games which extremely YouTubeable. I don't think they set out to make a YouTubeable game. I don't think they think, guys, how are we going to make a game which is... But some games lend themselves to that more than others. I know that we did a game jam. Last week we did a game which was absolutely brilliant. We have a thing we call BossaCon, where the entire company, we go off-site and we just talk about games for a whole day. And afterwards we did a 4-day game jam. So last week basically no work was done at Bossa. And in that 4-day game jam, I can't say anything, hopefully soon I can show you guys. There was one game which was just, like, it's going to take over YouTube. Right? If they're ever going to make that, it's going to take over the internet. Like, Reddit will be renamed after that game. So it's going to be, and it's amazing, but it wasn't born like, oh, I want to make a game which is going to rule YouTube. It was made that, that it will be a very cool game. And don't forget one thing. What makes something YouTubeable if it has procedural content? For example, it has physics, if it has a lot of player-generated content, if it has, those are actually just cool games. So, and a lot of games that you see nowadays, being extremely successful, including like DayZ and many other, they tick those boxes, and they become YouTubeable, but actually they're just really good games. But then again, the question what you asked before is that there are some games which are less so and still amazing games. As I said, Papers, Please was one of my favorite games of last year. Lucas won a BAFTA in front of us because we were in the same category, and he won. And you know what? From all the other nominees, I would have been upset if anyone else wins. But because it was Lucas, I felt actually really happy for him. And I told him afterwards. I think he was a bit surprised because I rushed at him. I was like, "Congratulations! You so deserve this." So anyway, so for example, that's not doable. It's about creating a game which you believe in. Yes?
How important is YouTube for exposure of a new game?
Excuse me?
How important is YouTube for exposure of a new game?
Very. I would say that press is, obviously online press, you know, all the big gaming websites are very important because they reach out to huge audiences. But I would say that if you plan of how are you going to talk about your game, so if you make a game and I'm just trying to harass all the journalists and sending your game and everything and tweeting them all the time until they block you, you know, but just that's great, but YouTube is, don't underestimate it. Like being able to be there and reaching millions of people. I mean, obviously PewDiePie is the biggest, but just to put it into context, when he did the first video about the iPad version of Surgeon, I think he clocked in 4 million views overnight, which is sick. Like if you think about it, 4 million. That's just, there's a numbers when it becomes like, well, I don't even know what that means. So you know, and it had a noticeable, like we could tell that was that on our sales chart. I can see a bit just because he made a video. So YouTube is your friend. Try to understand the language, and don't forget up and coming platforms like Twitch. Twitch is becoming hugely important, and when I go around talk with tele people, I'm telling them that don't underestimate Twitch. It's an amazing platform, and they're going places. Yes.
Have you ever had any like serious doubts and scrapped what you were doing from the beginning? And also like, if you've had serious doubts, how have you like managed to convince yourself that this is like good and worth it?
Let me start with someone else's story. Josef Fares, who was the creator of Brothers, Tale of Two Sons, which came out on a couple of platforms, which, by the way, the loveliest fairy tale I've ever played. It's gorgeous. You should play it if you have a chance. And I was talking to him a couple of weeks back, and he said that they got mock reviews. Now, mock reviews are basically you pay a journalist, and you give them the game, and you say, review the game. Tell me what score you will give it when it comes out. He got 2 of them coming back. One 3 out of 10, the other was 5 out of 10, which is scary. Like basically anything below 6 means you're rubbish. So his response was, sorry, I'm going to do it anyway. And he went through and he became really successful. Now this story would be less motivational if that game failed, obviously. But the point is that you have to have some level of conviction. But in my experience, the number of ideas you have to throw away is immense. We have a game jam every month. We have usually between 4 to 6 games. We do it for, like, with this intensity for 2 years. There is some math and a big number. That many ideas we have. How many you see out there? So there's a lot of ideas you have to be willing to throw away, and that's good because it is the survival of the fittest. It's going to be that you go for an idea, you really get attached to it, and then you have to be able to let it go and say, no, this idea wasn't good enough, I'm going to move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. You have to be very, very willing as a creator to know what really matters. There are games which I'm dreaming about. Seriously, there's one game which I really want to make, and I'm thinking about it for at least 10 years, at least. And I know because I found the document dated more than 10 years. And by that time, I already must have spent some time thinking about this. And every time I look at this, and I change it, and I abandon it, and I come back to it again. Because I believe there is something there, but the game is not right. I know that that emotion which I want to portray and how I want the player to feel, that's powerful, and I want to achieve that, but every idea I had so far was rubbish, therefore I just move on. So you have to be very willing. Now, as far as convincing yourself, you look like a creative person. At some point, you just have to have the guts to say, I am going to stick with that idea. And you're going to burn yourself. Like, I had games which I really believed in and came out, and it was absolutely butchered. And it happens. It happens. And it's nothing. I mean, as a creator, you have to put yourself out there. And the fact is that the better creator you are, the more your heart and soul is in it, and the more it's going to hurt when people don't get it. It can get really emotional. I can tell you that much. So prepare yourself, because it's tough. But you know what? It's still worth it. Because after, like, you burn yourself and you wake up and you say, I'm never going to make games again. And then you go back to the office the next day and you think, right, so what's the next game? And that's brilliant. But it is a very, very difficult thing to do. Emotionally, it's training. I think you had a question.
Last one.
Okay, yes.
Are you doing autographs at the end?
Excuse me?
Are you doing autographs at the end?
I can. It's very kind of you. I'm not that exciting a person, but of course I'm very happy to. Of course. Although maybe you just want to, forge some contracts. Okay, just one last. I think you had one or two, so maybe someone else. You can ask me afterwards.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Anyone before?
Good.
No.
Guys, then thank you very much. It was very kind of you.
Thank you very much indeed. Please join me in thanking him.